Welcome, I'm Jamie Hamilton, the Marketing Manager at Key Facilities Management, and I am joined today by Gordon Mitchell, who is the Chief Information Officer, and we're going to be having a brief chat about smart technologies and their implications for facilities management, particularly with a focus on the management of critical assets and environments. So, to kick off, it would be great, Gordon, if you could give us a brief overview of your experience with FM technologies.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, it's, I guess, been quite a long journey. We started really getting involved in the technology space in terms of integrating it with facilities management back in the early 90s when, I guess, PDAs were starting to get used to help with security audits and things like that. Clearly, the technology space has evolved quite substantially in that time, and I guess with our ability to stay quite focused on the purist aspect of facilities management, that's allowed us to really ride the technical wave and start to adapt and adopt and integrate some of the cutting edge new technology revolutions into our common everyday business practice.
Where do smart technologies fit into that picture? Can you give us a definition of them for a non-technical audience?
I think the real definition around the smart part of technologies is something that allows you to take a next action, something that gives you an insight, something that evolves how you do what you do, something that is either automative in and of itself, has some automated controls, or something that is even more cutting edge in terms of artificial intelligence and bringing in the whole power of the cloud and bringing it into almost your pocket.
So, can you give us an overview of the current landscape, specifically in an FM context? Where is the chief demand for smart technologies now, in your experience?
Where we're seeing smart technology getting leveraged is around energy efficiency, starting to really let people understand the profile and the usage of what's going on within their built environment. I think alongside that we're seeing things like critical asset monitoring, so you can start to get into almost a conditional and predictive sense of looking after your assets rather than just adhering to a particular regime which may or may not catch everything that's going on, starting to let the asset actually talk to you. And I guess maybe slightly out left field, but definitely becoming part of the focus of the FM landscape is optimization of the actual work environment and starting to bring insights to lead to happy, more productive people and a more attractive atmosphere to work within that you're starting to see pioneered by some of the biggest firms on the planet.
Very interesting. Have you seen any really innovative applications of Smart FM? What's the most interesting application you've seen in 2017?
In this smart technology space, the best instance that I've seen in terms of really revolutionising a business model is probably around agriculture. There was an instance where the whole dairy industry has really embraced smart technologies, where there's a Fitbit for cows. Basically, the Fitbit is an accelerometer, and that has an ability to track motion, and the way the cows move manifests different traits that indicate one of 6 typical illnesses that cows would get. So each of those 6 illnesses are able to be quite precisely identified by the movements of the cows, and then there's a gateway which via Bluetooth downloads all of that data from their movements out in the field, and then through an algorithm the system is then able to ascertain, is this a cow that needs looked at by the farmer? And upon exiting the shed, they're able to then reallocate the cow into a holding pen so that when the farmer comes in the morning, there's basically a pen full of potentially ill animals for him to be able to look right away at, rather than going to have to find them across multi-acres. And this has had the benefit of giving eyes and ears 24/7, which is again allowing the farmer to be much more accurate and precise and timely in terms of looking after his animals, and reducing their whole process time frame by a factor of about 1/8. And I think that's somewhere that you might not feel smart technologies can be applied. So to me it demonstrates that it can go everywhere, and when it does and you properly understand how it can work and benefit your business, it can truly take you into a new way of working.
It's incredible that they can tell so much about the cow just from the way it moves. So data analysis seems to be one of the ways smart technology is going, in that people are beginning to look at the data and ask what that data can tell them and using it to preempt issues.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Definitely the big promise of this whole space is the ability to see things before they happen. We've had building management systems for a number of decades now, and what they tend to do is react, but with the big data coupled with artificial intelligence overlaid on the likes of a building management system. The promise of that is that the building's then able to adapt itself before the problems occurred, and even be positioning itself with a plan, if you like, for how to tackle the day ahead based on weather forecasts, potential increased footfall. I think that to me is the big win for FM. If you can address a problem before it's come, then you'll end up with some very happy customers.
So rather than the facilities managers planning their schedule for the building is managing its own schedule in a way.
Yeah, I think in terms of that rudimentary aspect of managing the building, that then lets the facilities manager step up a level and be able to bring some of those deeper insights and start to learn with the machine and start to really take facilities management into the next generation of possibilities.
That's fascinating. So the future is technology enabled buildings and facilities managers. So now let's take a sharper focus on one application of smart technologies that you've mentioned. That's the use of it for the management of risk, of monitoring critical assets and environments. What kind of businesses do you think this is most relevant to, Gordon, and why?
Where we're seeing the adoption of smart systems is around anywhere that's got those critical assets which are either integral to their operation or are required to maintain environmental conditions. We've seen it applied in manufacturing, we've seen it applied in the pharmaceutical space, across the food sector, where all these controls and insights into what's going on within the assets is highly important to the business and its mechanics. If the production line ceases because of a critical piece of equipment, if the temperature goes out of a controlled band, then produce can be lost. So we're starting to see people, I guess, trying to leverage what has been accessible to big business for many years, but bring it into the SME space to really give you that control, but not at the price that it has traditionally been. So I think because of that affordability aspect, you're also starting to see people being able to even go beyond where the big business analysis had been in the past and dig even deeper and start to really learn from the data rather than just control the environment.
I think what I could really benefit from now is some context. Could you talk me through a recent situation where a customer acquired Smart FM for environmental monitoring?
Sure, we had a project with an importer and wholesaler of specialist foods. They store fine meats imported from the continent, and he had actually had one of his refrigeration units go down in the past, and it was estimated that he lost about £12,000 worth of produce. The implications of that are obviously over and above just the raw produce. Because he's an importer, he had to reobtain all this produce from the continent, and of course for any business of that type you have people that are awaiting you to deliver your produce to them. So the implications were much more than the £12,000 of produce lost. The implications across the whole functioning of his business were quite far reaching. So they had, a few walk-in freezers, and we installed a smart system that gave them real-time monitoring, allowed them to review their temperature, their humidity, and also the human dimension of people interacting with those spaces, i.e. opening the walk-in store. We set parameters around the sensors to start to alert, to let people know what was happening out with their accepted limits. You get an earlier alert when things start to look that they're getting towards a point where you want to intervene. So this really enabled him to take control, is the bottom line, to start getting him in a position where he now had the measures, had the technology, had the insight to really mitigate that risk and take his business into a much more secure and safe place, and at the end of the day deliver to happy customers. So in this instance, you could almost view it as an insurance policy that would enable you to really secure and support your business in ways that probably was just not cost effective for an operation that wasn't in a kind of multinational standing.
Is there another case study that can elucidate how smart technologies can be used to monitor critical assets?
Yeah, well, we've obviously just been talking about an application that allowed a SME to really leverage some of the big business capabilities, but in this scenario this actually was a multinational organisation. A thunderstorm led to flooding of a server room and really let them see that they were a little bit more vulnerable than they had thought they were. One day of that office being offline, if you like, was something like $15,000, and that really gave you the basics of a good business case as to why having smart monitoring and being able to preempt and prevent that type of instance, it has its value. So that led to the client just to reevaluate, and we obviously were happy to kind of bring together a solution that gave them very bespoke monitoring around their server rooms, which yes, addressed the potential of the thunderstorm scenario, but it was much more than that. I think what it enabled them to really get into was this ability to actually leverage your resource in far more intelligent ways, rather than having to just check a particular room to make sure its conditions are where they should be. So we proved the concept on this one site, but then it was adopted and taken over another subsequent 7 sites, and across those sites, just the man hours, there's about 350 hours a year saving. It all hung together as a very efficient project that, again, really evolved the way the business functioned, and that's the promise of smart technologies.
So for the closing question, given that smart technologies have been around for quite some time now, and the business case would appear to be a no-brainer across a variety of scenarios such as you've talked about, why do you think it's taken so long for smart FM to go mainstream? What has the hold-up been, and why is the tipping point happening now?
I think we've really had an array of factors, but the main thing has been the FM discipline itself. We are, and always have been, the custodians of the built environment, and having the capability for the FMers to be really driving this smart space. I think over the past few decades, what you've seen is the technology has been progressing. That has led to smaller chipsets, that's led to more affordable sensors and systems, it's led to a more capable cloud environment with adaptive alerting, forecasting platforms. But really, to get all that to work together in your built environment, what you need is smart FMers. And I think having had all of those factors, maybe 2-3 years ago, they were probably in a pretty usable space, but the FM sector itself hadn't really adopted it and integrated it into almost our DNA. I think the hold-up has been that learning curve, that infusing of the smart technologies into the FM toolkit. And really now I think the tipping point's happening because the FMers are starting to really take the bull by the horns and understand how this evolves, what FM looks like, how FM functions, and really what benefit can be derived for our end clients. So I think I would say the technology's there, the connectivity's there. We now have some very sophisticated platforms that can pull together all of these disparate parts into a cohesive, unified end-to-end system. But the real key to it is the right partner, the right FM to really take all of this potential, take all of these variants that are out there and blend it into something that is a bespoke, unique system that value adds to your business, that is positioned to benefit how you function. We listen, we understand, we take the best of what's out there and we give you what's going to work for you.
Thank you very much, Gordon.
Thanks, Jamie.